question whose answer is the first step to understanding peace. Whether it is the World Trade Center, the Buddhas of Afghanistan, the National Cathedral of Argentina, the mosques of Babri Masjid, the Temple Mount, Tiananmen Square, the Gdansk shipyards, the Golden Temple of Amritsar, or most recently the World Trade Center. These places have come to be the symbols of conflict and to have a highly emotional and cultural value content. Today, the cultural rights that enable such places, that enable heritage as we understand it, are closely linked to human rights. Fundamental freedoms such as religion, expression, association, health, and education play a key role in cultural rights. The rights to participate in one's cultural frequently includes the rights to practice one's own religion and to educate your own children in these forms and the substance of your own culture. However, how these are prioritized and whether they are derived from individual rights or group rights or human rights leads to very different kinds of answers. There are at least two very different interpretations. One view is that cultural heritage and cultural value is an individual right. The other is that it is a group right. From the former viewpoint, every individual has the right to participate in his own or her own heritage or religion. One has the right to be a Jain if one wishes to. However, this does not necessarily imply the right to participate in some other culture's heritage or values. In other words, if one participates, say, in Finnish heritage, one may not have the right to participate in Sami or the Lap heritage. Nor does it apply the right to live in a global heritage. The other view of cultural heritage and cultural value is the one that is taken by the UN, and that is that it is a group right. It is suggested in such declarations as the Algiers Declaration of the Rights of People in 1976, the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies, and many other documents. However, what I want to just simply point out is that these two views come into conflict, because characterizing the right as belonging to a community or a collective means that that collective can deny that right to individuals. And one of the ways to look at this is to look at the way that heritage places or places of cultural value are owned. And what we find when we summarize this and survey it in the same way that Michaela surveyed definitions of peace, there are four different ways. One, for some societies and nations, cultural value is owned by the individual, it is private. For others, it is a community, so that the Hopis, who are an indigenous tribe in the United States, in the same way as we have indigenous tribes in Rajasthan, have the right to own their own religious and cultural values and their own religious places. For some places, it is national. This national state owns these places of cultural heritage. And therefore, they have the right to give access to it, or as in the case of Afghanistan, to destroy the Buddhas of the Taliban, by the Taliban, excuse me. And finally, there is a fourth order, and that is that for some societies, humanity as a whole has the right to define heritage. And no individual, no other society, no nation state can prevent people from participating. One can do what Dr. Ryu did yesterday and look at these in chronological order. And if we do, what we discover is the following. That in the early periods, say from 1000 AD to the early 1800s, cultural heritage tended to be held by ethnic communities. Next, it seems to be held by national states as we went past the French Revolution and the nationalization of countries. And with that, of course, came colonialism and the colonial view of cultural heritage, which we see in India. And finally, third, we come to the view of humanity, and it was associated with human rights. And finally, in the fourth period, what seems to be is a return backwards to privacy with the Washington Consensus and the kind of force that's being used by such organizations as the World Bank and the IMF. In any case, what I just want to suggest, and this is my one and simple point, that one of the places where we see conflict, one of the causes for conflict, is when we have these four different views of cultural value, and one society takes one, and another takes a second. It is thus not surprising, as I conclude, that the politics of resistance, whether it is the politics of resistance or peaceful or not, are attached to small-scale communities where they are located, because it is in small-scale communities that the symbols of alienation from the rationalized, commodified, technified nation-states are able to be expressed. Ultimately, the relationship of power and identity at some of these places of cultural heritage are problematic. They're problematic to the global organizations, and they're problematic to the national state, because the national state cannot control the rule systems which it establishes for its extremities. Those are the extremities where the poor, the rural, the dispossessed live. Thank you.